afternoon, everyone. My name is Elisa Worley, and I'm the Global Marketing Lead for Blockchain at Accenture. We started this panel, you ladies please sit. We started this panel because we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the topic today is really about diversity and inclusion, and that means a conversation that includes everyone. I'm very excited today to have the women on the panel with me. I think each of us individually and with our respective organizations have a deep commitment to building inclusive and diverse cultures in the environments in which we operate, because we want to make sure that we are attracting, welcoming, making everybody feel included so we have the best talent represented to bring blockchain to life and to scale. And Accenture conducted some research with Girls Who Code about 2 years ago broadly about STEM initiatives, and what they found was that statistics are relatively alarming. 26% of women are participating in, the computer workforce is roughly 26% women. It's too low, and that's declining, and that creates a whole host of issues, meaning that we were already at a critical talent shortfall. We're continuing to be at risk. It will damage innovation, not only across the broader technologies, but clearly the one that I'm most interested in, I think the most that we're all interested in, which is blockchain. There's enormous challenges to try and get this technology to scale. But it's more than just a gender issue. It clearly is indicative of underrepresented demographics, including African American or Latinas that represent roughly 5% of the tech industry. But the demographics are changing. Last year were the first year that in the US that 50% of births were white. 76 million baby boomers are alive today, 72% of them white, but now 87 million millennials are more diverse, with 56% white. So the face of the world is changing, with 85% of the world identifying as people of color. But is the face of leadership changing along with it? I have a question for the room. Raise your hand if your name is John. Can't see a whole lot of hands up. So 3% of the male population is named John. 51% of the population in the US is women. Nevertheless, there are more people named John that lead leading organizations than women. More people named David that lead organizations than women. So the face of, like I said, the face of the demographic is changing, but leadership and positions of power are not necessarily doing it at the same pace. So what do we do about it? That's what we're here to talk about today. And I want to explore this with this incredible panel. So if you could, actually starting with Tessie, if you wouldn't mind, please introduce yourself, talk a little bit about the programs that you're working in the diversity and inclusion space, and tell me a little bit about what you do.
Hello, my name is Tessie Merain, and I work with Consensus since about 3 years. I'm a user experience and product strategist, and have worked on Uport, which is an identity solution, worked on the precursor of Viant, which is a provenance tracking tool, and I'm the co-founder of Liquality, which is a decentralized exchange protocol and a swap implementation, cross-chain swap implementation. The word Liquality says it all. It's about liquidity and equality. So equality is really important to me. I'm also the founder of Women in Blockchain, which I started in 2016. So in both my work and my private work, I'm very much about creating diversity and inclusion for the space. And yeah, that's me.
Sharon?
So I'm going to just stand up. Hey, guys. Pay attention. So when we talk about inclusion, we talk about I believe, I belong, I matter. So we all believe, belong, and matter up here. I'm Sharon Coco. I'm the Dev Director of Blockchain Technologies at IBM. I guess I've gotten everybody's attention, so I'll sit down.
Well done.
But thank you. Please keep cheering for the rest of these lovely people up here. So I'm actually on the governing board of Hyperledger. And I have spoken across the country to many women in colleges. I actually am a strong supporter of abused women and abused children. And I've also been participating in teaching children on how to code, specifically girls in code. I very strongly believe in I believe, I belong, I matter. It's not just about women, it's appreciating everybody for who they are.
Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Rowe. I'm the CEO of the Global Blockchain Business Council, but if any of you have been here in previous consensus years, many of you would remember me as sort of the former head of digitization at CME Group. When I think about where we are today, I think we've made a lot of progress. So I hope we're not going to necessarily think this is all bad, and progress has been made in the blockchain space, but we have a lot more to do. What GBBC does, it's a Swiss nonprofit, and we focus squarely on education, advocacy, and partnership to help promulgate the business of blockchain. And that means dealing with people at the highest levels of government, regulators, and executives around the world. We want to also democratize and distribute this technology opportunity set as much as possible, because if we're all here, we believe this is the next multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. Well, do you think it's fair if it sits all in the US or all in one country? We don't. And so we work really hard to make sure that we start with the education piece and we evolve to help make sure that our business partners and governments and everyone else who needs to be involved comes together to create equal opportunities.
I love that. Totally love that. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you guys are enjoying your lunch while getting some great inspiration here. I'm Melanie Cutlin, and I'm a Managing Director in Accenture Operations, and I lead our Blockchain for Operations practice. So I get a chance to look at our enterprise businesses and their middle and back office and how it will be transformed with a new shared data structure, and really helping to think about not just where we are today, but how we can get to that next level. And diversity to me is diversity of thought brings the right solutions to the table, right? We've got to have a complete set of minds to really create solutions that incorporate those future users of any given solution. And so to me, it's core. I started coding when I was probably less than 10. I can't keep track. I wish I still coded because I think it's so much fun, but I just enjoy this technology space. There's so much capability and future and hope with blockchain that I think it's fantastic to really bring the right minds to the table, because our solutions are so much better when we do so.
Ladies and gentlemen, please shh. Thank you.
It's a good male ally.
Male voice.
Yay for male allies. So, hi everyone, I'm Karen Ottoni. I am the Director of Ecosystem at Hyperledger, which is part of the Linux Foundation. If you're not familiar with us, we are an open source software development community working a variety of technologies, and at Hyperledger specifically in blockchain. And one of the philosophies at Hyperledger and at Linux overall is that once code gets contributed to the open source community, the whole point of that is to have the contributions to that code be diverse. And diverse there means different people, different companies contributing to it, and they believe in that because that has been proven in the 16 years that Linux Foundation has been around to make the code stronger and more sustainable in the long term. And so what I'm working to do in my work and also outside of it is to bring that philosophy into how the makeup of the people doing everything in that look like and where they come from. So I'm involved with Tessie and Women in Blockchain as well here in New York City. We had our meetup last night. If you were there, I hope you had a great time. And if not, join us next month. We have events every month. And then
it's not just women, by the way. Actually, one of the events, December, the Christmas event, was more guys than women.
Yeah, it's a mix.
Smart action, right?
Everyone's welcome. And I'm also involved in an organization that's newly launched here in New York City as well, called Diversity in Blockchain. So there's lots of initiatives out there. The more we see, the better, I think. And so I'm excited to talk about that.
Fantastic. And actually, I'm going to pick up on a thread, Sandra, and come to you. So Karen was just mentioning that the code is stronger because of diversity. So how impactful or meaningful is diversity in organizations?
So I can only speak to organizations that obviously I interact with. We have goals, I guess you could say that, in terms of making sure that we have diversity. And we actually have the opposite problem. Our entire executive team, or nearly all of our executive team, is actually women. So we're trying to get more guys in. But I think what's really key is not necessarily saying it's got to be 50-50 or it's got to be a certain metric, but actually in my mind, it's really important just to say, do we have the right skill sets? Do we have the right types of voices in the room? And is that sitting only in one bucket from a demographic or from a background or gender? I think we actually need to look at everything and say to ourselves, do we have people from different backgrounds, different walks of life, different experiences, let alone, you know, skin color or hair color or whatever it is, ethnicities. And for us, it is at the forefront of what we do. How conscious that is, I guess, when leadership makes it a requirement, that sets the tone for the rest of the organization, and I actually do think that is important.
Absolutely. So what does that mean for organizations like IBM, Sharon, when they take something like this on?
So if I could have like money every time somebody said, oh, you just made it to dev director because you're a female. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, but I worked pretty hard to get where I am, and it took a lot of qualifications. But I will tell you that having a goal, a diversity goal, is actually very important. But it comes in ways that people don't probably recognize. So I don't know that anybody realizes this, but does everybody know who Sandra Day O'Connor was?
Yep.
Yeah, Sandra Day O'Connor was the first woman acting as a Supreme Justice. And does everybody know that she actually took 5 years off to take care of her kids? And then she became the Supreme Justice. How amazing is that? Well, recently, when you start looking at diversity statistics, you start to introduce programs like the Tech Reentry program. And this allows men, women, people of color, you name it, diverse candidates who maybe they took off because they had an aging parent. Maybe they took off because they had kids to take care of. But they're very technically talented, and it allows them to come back into the technical field, do an internship program, and then have a career again. And we've seen programs like this at IBM, Intel, Accenture, JP Morgan. A lot of companies have instituted this program to help their diversity statistics. And in fact, there was a female that joined my team within the last year that fit under this program that has been wildly successful. So do diversity statistics matter? Yes, they do. It helps hire a diverse pool of people so that you have a diverse set of candidates and you can select who has the right skill. Or maybe you have this tech reentry program that gets introduced trying to attract more women or trying to attract different constituents across the diversity spectrum. It matters. It matters a lot.
It does matter. But are we at risk of making it just a numbers game? Because there's a woman named Arwa Modawi, actually thought it was quite funny. And she actually thought that we were taking the diversity question a little bit too seriously. So she created a fake company called Rent a Minority to poke fun at the problem. Thousands of people registered to participate. Thousands of companies reached out to her to actually ask her how to participate in the program and how they could take advantage of it. So that's indicative of the fact that somewhere out there is this notion of this is just a numbers game. So how do we avoid diversity for diversity's sake? Melanie, what are we doing to make sure that people with the right skill actually get the job?
Well, it is all about making sure people with the right skills get the right job, right? And it's bringing together that diversity of thought that makes that helpful, right, through the process. And what what's interesting is last year I got a chance to talk at our International Women's Day in Denver about our Getting to Equal data. And when you create an environment that's inclusive, that actually brings the diversity of thought to the table, everyone rises. So the term was, as she rises, we all rise, right? The people who are able to get promoted were actually significantly higher. When you've got that inclusive environment, it actually makes business better if we've got the right people at the table creating the right solutions. And so it's not just about metrics, it's not just about data, it's not just about being fair, it's really about your business thrives when you have the right amount of information and points of view together. I chuckled as I was building a new team. I had already put 4 or 5 developers and engineers and innovators of men together, and I brought the next woman into the team, and the team literally called me 2 weeks later and said, we all started straightening up after lunch and feeling responsible and feeling like they had to just be different at work. And it would just change the entire culture of the team as we were building out the team, which continued to grow, and it does. It just brings a different part of yourself. They were thinking about different parts of a user experience that mattered. And so business thrives when we create an environment that's welcome to all.
So, Tessie, is it just as simple as hiring more individuals from underrepresented demographics? Do quotas work, for example?
As we have talked about before, I believe in quotas, and that's actually something where Lisa changed her mind on over the past few years, which is great.
You did?
Yes. So I believe in quotas because I believe that diversity has different aspects, right? Number one, I totally agree, diversity comes in all different types of faces. It's age diversity, it's experience diversity in general, it's LGBTQ, it's gender diversity. There's so many types of diversity that we shouldn't just look at the one type of diversity, right? My focus is on women in blockchain, and this is the one side of it. But the other side says, all people, one world. And that's really the goal that we're getting to, right? We want to create a world that works for everybody. And so we have to create role models. And if you don't have quotas, then a leader doesn't look female, for example, or doesn't look brown, or doesn't look Hispanic, or doesn't look short or tall or something, right? So right now, leadership is defined by a patriarchal system, and we have to really zoom out and make sure that we invite people in who don't necessarily immediately look like leaders, right? So that's the only way how we can start thinking out of the box and how we can start redefining what power looks like. And power, I'm doing this because even, I'm uncomfortable with the word power because power is dominating, right? And so we have learned that power is dominating, but power can actually be something that we can share and that we can do together. And so we all are a product of this system right now. And in order to go beyond that, quotas is one way, conversation and experimenting with different types of leadership, which we at Consensus actually do a lot. Consensus the company, not Consensus the conference, is really important. So yes, we have to give opportunity. If that hadn't happened via quotas, African Americans wouldn't be where they are today, and we're still not far enough with that yet.
Yes. So as Tessie mentioned, we used to debate quite a bit about the merits of quotas, because my whole point of view was, no, we just all want the same opportunity. If somebody is labeled, like, somebody is thinking that IBM promotes people because of, their gender, I don't know how companies would succeed if they didn't actually have the skill sets to back that up. But it seemed like people were taking a hit, that there was a perception that they didn't get it for their qualifications, but they were getting it because they needed to fill a number. But the reality is, that is the case, that the first year, so California, for example, has instituted a 50-50 quota for board members. That first gen that takes those roles, they actually do experience that kind of discrimination. They do have that kind of bias against them, but then organically, those boards actually become more diverse. So you changed my mind. And I do actually see, yeah, you do have to kind of just push that in order to get to the right outcome.
Well, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, in the women's space, working with women, it's the women who are against the quotas often, because they say we don't want to have this as a gesture, and they don't want to be advanced just because of gender. But nobody thinks about the fact that yes, at 2 years the differentiation already starts, right? So the boys are like, yes, you're great, you are mathematical, you are engineering. We see this, and by the time females come to, you know, the gate of like, here, let's see who's the best programmer, they probably are somewhat behind, but that doesn't mean that they can't catch up. And so we have to make sure that we rethink this idea about, you know, quotas being something bad, but that we say that, you know, there is this time where everybody can catch up, and we also have something to bring to the table that the male counterparts don't have, and that's extremely important.
Yeah.
So that's something I want
for the builders and creators.
That's something I want to add, is because a couple people have said, you know, we got to make sure they have the skills, but there's skills that are unacknowledged that are beneficial, right? Exactly. There are unacknowledged, valuable skills that may not be part of the resume, but that someone brings in that we just as a society don't look for or have a blind spot for. And that's why you then see these statistics of women-led companies being more successful, except, you know, these statistics are coming out because there are skills there that we didn't know we needed to look for.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and I think we were also talking about, before we came on stage, the fact that there are many biases, not just against women, right? And I think it takes a lot to work with the team and to make sure that everybody, you know, feels like they believe they belong, they matter. I have a interesting story about somebody that was handicapped. You would never realize they were handicapped. And this particular engineer, white male, very introverted. And I had to work really hard to get him to come out of his shell. I was taking him to coffee every day, trying to get him to speak up. And ultimately found out he had a hearing problem. And it wasn't introversion, it was the fact that he couldn't hear. He was handicapped. And he was in an environment that did not lead him to be as productive as he could have been, because it was hard to be part of the conversation. And so we worked to change that for him. So I think we do need quotas for women. We do need quotas for handicapped. We do need quotas for, you know, people of color, et cetera, or sexual orientation. But we also need to have an appreciation across the diversity spectrum and have that sense of I belong, I believe, I matter.
So Sandra, with your own organizations, because we've been focusing a lot about the numbers and diversity, but inclusion is probably more important.
Yeah.
How does this all play out with the organizations that you're currently working with?
Right. If you don't mind, I'm just going to respond to
Not at all.
This, and then I'll answer your question. So I'm going to play slight devil's advocate just because I grew up in the banking space on the trading side, and I will tell you from my own personal experience, banks tried very hard with 50-50 quotas of analysts and associate classes, and actually they're doing pretty well. They're closing the gap, and so women come in, they start going up the ranks, and then where it really starts falling apart is mid-level to then upper management.
Yep.
And so I feel like the quota situation definitely helps, but then you need sustained cognizance of the fact that there are real power plays and resistance happening at the highest levels of power. So you've got a pyramid, there's only so many spots at the top, right? And so then the question is, how many women or people of different backgrounds or whatever have you get to sit up there? And to me, Once you get up to that level at the top of the pyramid, the dynamics change rapidly. And it's not about quotas anymore. It's actually around a number of different factors. And so here's the thing. I will put it out there. If your leadership doesn't sit there and actively and consciously want this to happen, then it won't. So whether it's a push or a pull, I don't know what the right combination is, but I do find particularly male-dominated industries like trading or banking in particular, it's probably going to be a push and a pull. Yeah. Given left to its own devices, it probably won't do.
And you know, it's clear that a lot of organizations have tackled this. There's an estimate that says $8 billion per year is spent on diversity training. But a lot of programs still fail. There's actually a Harvard organizational sociology professor named Frank Dobbin, who's actually said that for most individuals, it just doesn't resonate. It actually creates a rift. It makes people fearful of their jobs. It makes somebody seem like other. And it doesn't necessarily foster this environment of inclusion, which again, I think it's one thing to actually do a numbers game. It's another thing entirely to say you are welcome here and I support everything that you're doing. So Sharon, you talked a little bit about some of the leadership training that you've taken recently at IBM. So how does this play out? What's the right answer? What's the right mix to make sure that we actually hit the mark here?
Yeah, I believe that you have to individually reach out to everybody on your team. You have to look for the quiet person at the table because sometimes they don't feel comfortable voicing and making sure you draw their opinions. You really have to break the barrier and get different perspectives. And I think it's a matter of looking across all the perspectives, making sure the women are heard, making sure somebody that can't hear is heard, making sure that somebody maybe with a different sexual orientation is heard. And it's all about listening and reaching out and breaking that barrier. And also promoting those opinions, right? And being behind them.
So Karen, Hyperledger has in Linux has an enormous commitment to this initiative. I actually think you have inclusion, diversity, and stability. Mm-hmm. How is this playing out for you guys? What are you thinking in this broad community across the globe to get them on board with this idea?
Yeah, I think it's been a challenge, and I think we're starting to see that there's been a little bit of a blind spot because open source, right? The default means everyone can participate, right? There's literally no barrier to people participating. But just by saying everyone is welcome doesn't mean you're going to get a wide variety of people to come because there's invisible barriers that we don't see. There's certainly no technological barrier to contributing to our code or participating in our communities, right? But there's invisible barriers where you go to an event and everyone kind of looks the same, right? Or everyone has the same background, right? And so that is, I think a big part of thinking about inclusion especially is thinking about what are your unconscious biases that we all actually have, and it's totally fine. I have them, and I care about this topic, and I have unconscious biases. But it's kind of looking into yourself, understanding what those biases are, and working, to compensate your handicap there. So seeing how can we make those events or environments that we're in more diverse. So maybe certain types of groups need a nudge, or need to be invited, or need to really be explicit that you really are welcome, right? And I think a big part of getting there is also getting to that visibility through promoting people who are coming from minority groups or just non-traditional, whatever the norm is, not that, right?
Yes,
so wherever your environment is, think about who's not there. That's who you should be promoting and including. And I think the more that you see that, that's why the visibility, as Tessie was mentioning, the quota part is the visibility is important, because when I see another, I'm Brazilian, so when I see another Latin American, or even someone with just curly hair, or, right? Like, when I see someone like that at an event, I feel more likely to connect with them. I feel like, okay, this looks a bit more like me. I feel like I can be welcome here, and therefore I can make a comment, speak up, contribute, right? I think we've all had this common experience. If you think back to when you were in school, haven't you all been the new kid in the class, right? Or the new kid on the basketball team or the softball team? That feeling of, I feel like kind of left out here and I don't know how to act in this environment. And did you have someone who said, hey, come sit with me at lunch? Or whatever it is, did you have someone like that? Just be that kind of person. Recognize those people that may not feel included, that may not feel represented, and find ways to bring them in and invite them in.
So I think the notion that unconscious bias exists is obviously, and recognizing that, and that's okay. It's part of our survival mechanism is really important. Can we train to that? Can we actually help people understand those better, Melanie?
Yeah, and so just to pile on what you were saying, like, we're all human, right? Like, at the end of the day, we're all human, and we do business with other people, and bringing that perspective together of we are all different and we don't look the same, and recognizing it. I think it used to be a weakness, right? To say, like, oh, they didn't step in, so they're weaker, right? Versus at the end of the day, we're all just human beings who want to be a part of something and who want to be included. And then unconscious bias, it's difficult. The more we travel around the world, the more we see different people of different cultures, right, as well, of recognizing different cultures and what's important to them. I think it's important, and what we've started doing around training is in an augmented reality scenario where you actually go through simulations and you identify and ask questions and you talk to different people and see, where is your unconscious bias? Where are you not seeing it? And what that allows you to do is become an intentional leader, right? So every one of you in the room, whether you put yourself in a diverse category or not, has a responsibility to be aware of these things, right? To be a mentor and a sponsor to someone, and to bring that stewardship forward, right? Carry someone with you and give them an opportunity. Like you said, give them a voice and bring them to the table. Because those unconscious biases, they're here and they're human and they're normal, but how do we, the success rates of over 90% are really seeing that it helps them prepare for situations and identify their own biases, which is just, I think, crazy to say that you could simulate this, see it, and be aware of it and train yourself to say, next time I know that I may make a mistake, and then it's really about how do I react to it and how do I engage with people over time and be intentional about it.
You guys,
I
I'm
would
going
love
to
to say
actually have
something.
everybody give closing remarks. Just give me 1 second. You guys, there's cards on the table. We're actually conducting research on this for blockchain. There's cards on the table if you would like to participate in this research. Please pick them up. Please participate, or email us at blockchain@accenture.com. I would talk about this with you guys all day, so I'm actually going to give closing remarks, starting with you, Tessie.
All right.
What can we do better, different? What's working? How can we actually get this jump-started further and move further along?
Okay, multifold. The problem we have right now is that there's a disconnect between the creating communities and the beneficiaries, right? So another way of experiencing the benefits of inclusion, diversity and inclusion, is the fact that we're building a global technology and global products, and we're moving power from the institutions to the individuals. So we are enhancing the responsibility of everyone, and we have to make sure everyone understands it, everyone understands the power they are getting, and knows how to catch the ball. So on the product level and the systems level, the heads of the companies, like I think Sandra said before, if the leadership isn't on board, it's not going to happen. And so we have to make sure that there is an understanding that the products and systems we build are global and will be more robust if they're actually informed by a variety of intelligence. So that's the only way how we're going to get there. And the problem is that that is an experience that comes out of it having happened already. So that's where we're at right now. Some of it is theoretical, but some of it is like building those diverse teams and experiencing the friction that is actually coming into the creation process, rather than in the end we're the ones who are like forgotten always will have to live with those products again that don't work for them. So we're bringing that problem into the creation process and working it out there and building the better products.
Sharon?
So I would love to be a Sandra Day O'Connor of my time, and I hope each one of you are a Sandra Day O'Connor of your time. In essence, please go out and get yourself educated. There is a lot to learn about unconscious bias. I've learned a lot about myself. I've made my own mistakes, and I encourage each one of you to do the same. And I think that's what it's really going to take. I think having quotas is what's going to take. I think having corporate programs. I think having meetups,
Yeah.
right? I encourage you guys to come to the session tomorrow night. I think all of that matters. And every one of us in this room needs to make a difference.
Yep.
That's what it's going to take.
Sandra?
Completely agree. And from a GBBC as a co-operator of the New York City Blockchain Center, which is a public-private partnership with MIC EDC, we are pledging, as part of the mission, major focal point around reducing the intimidation factor of tech, particularly blockchain, making it fun, and going to neighborhoods and boroughs where people do not talk about tech on a regular basis. And that includes Blockchain 101 classes in Spanish. That includes outreach at all ages and backgrounds. And so as we do that, we ask for your help and support in any way that you can, not just the money, but it's around as a community coming together and doing things together, inclusion.
Yep. Melanie?
I mean, blockchain is new and exciting, and why wouldn't you step into it, right? It's an emerging technology that allows you to think about things in so many different ways, and it requires that consistent diversity of thought, and that we all need to take that moment, as these ladies said, right, and find what is your role. Who are you going to help shepherd through this process to make it easier to understand, to bring the fun to your work, right? There should be fun in everything that we do, and find that joy and that hope where the new solutions can bring it together. And so in doing that, who doesn't want to be in a fun place, right? Even if they don't look like you can be in an inclusive environment. So I'd say continue to find your role. Everyone should have a role in diversity. It's not we need all of these programs, but we also need to individually take action.
And Karen?
Yeah. So I think organizationally, look at what your organization is doing or not doing. If they just put this in the front of your mind and try to put a diversity and inclusion lens on everything you're seeing in your day-to-day work, and ask the question, like, is this fulfilling that, right? And so if it's not, then talk with people internally, find others that have a similar motivation, and start something at your organization to start focusing on diversity and inclusion. Personally, I think this is something that is going to take small changes happening across a society.
Yep.
And so it's really about individuals changing as well. And the way that happens the best, I think, is like walk a day in someone else's shoes. So put yourself in environments that other people are experiencing, right? So if you're a man, come to the Women in Blockchain meetup and see what it's like to be a minority at a blockchain meetup, right? See what it's like to be the only guy in a room, and see how that's what most women experience. And I think if you can experience it yourself, you'll have a lot more empathy and compassion for how to make that experience better for others that may be going through that at your organization or in activities that you're doing.
Fantastic. So what I heard a lot of was awareness, education, pay attention,
Join the conversation, which is what we're inviting you to do. Let's keep talking about this and keep making progress. Please give a warm round of applause for the panelists. It was a great conversation.
Everybody stand up.
Oh, we're standing. We're
All right, can they hear me? Wait, can they hear me?
I don't know.
Can we mic it? Can we mic it? Mic it? I believe. Say, I believe. I believe. I belong.
I belong.
I matter.
I matter. All right. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. And thanks for listening, everybody.